Okay, so in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create a facing which you can then add to your pattern. A facing is simply an extra piece of material that lies on the inside of the garment that basically follows the top line, or in this case will follow the top line of the garment. So it simply stops us having raw edges on the neckline and the armhole. So of course these two seams will be joined, whereas these, the neckline, will be raw. If you simply make it without a facing. If you add a facing, you would stitch these together. You'd stitch the block to the facing, which would give you nice smooth seams with no raw edges. It's a very, very simple technique, and it can pretty much apply to any neckline you want. So no matter what neckline shape I have, we can still apply a facing. And first of all, I'm going to show you how to create the facing by copying and pasting or tracing off this block and then creating new facing panels. And then I'll show you how to create it for different necklines, let's say. Okay, so first of all, I'm simply using the block that I created in the last tutorial. Let's just ungroup some of these items. So let's click on this block with our big selection tool, object, let's ungroup, same with this one, object, ungroup. That just simply means we can pull off our description or information. Okay, it's important because obviously we're going to start playing around with these blocks. Next, I'm going to change the size of my artboard. I'm going to give us much more space here, or change the size of our cutting table. Just go Edit, and then, where is it? File, Document Setup, and let's go Edit Artboards, and I can just simply click and drag to pull this out. And then just Big Selection Tool will lock that artboard so you can't amend it or play with it. Next, I'm going to get my Big Selection Tool, just here. I'm going to click and drag over the entirety of those two blocks, and I'm going to go Edit, Copy, Edit, Paste, and simply place that next to our existing pattern. So this will be our facing pattern, and this is going to be our block pattern. So let's just select all of this and then lock it so we don't actually change anything. Okay, we can't do anything with it now. We can only edit this pattern. Great. So the next step is to create a facing. Now, facing works much in a similar way as a lining does. If you were to have a lining, you'd simply cut these panels out, and then when you construct your garment, you'd have the raw edges on the inside of your toile, and essentially there would be material, or the right side on your skin, and also the right side of the material on the outside of the garment. It's hard to explain without imagery or photography, but hopefully you understand the concept of what a facing is, and if not, hopefully this tutorial will help. You can always get in contact with us if you need additional information. Okay, so to create this facing panel, first of all, I'm going to create some points. Okay, so I'm going to go to my circle tool, so I'm just going to click and hold ellipse tool. Let's zoom in, and let's just create a little point. Okay, and I'm doing that simply by clicking and dragging with the circle tool with the shift held down. Great, so we have our circle. Let's just give it a nice Pattern Lab blue. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to place this. It's actually a little bit difficult to see. There we go, let's make it a little bit darker. Let's also make our pattern lines a little bit darker as well. There we go, that's a bit clearer, isn't it? Okay, maybe a little bit too much. Great. Okay, so with this point, I'm simply going to place it at the very center front of my front bodice at the neckline. And I'm going to measure down roughly, let's say, 10 centimeters. Okay, so to do that, I'm simply going to select my point. I'm going to hit the Enter key on my keyboard. I'm going to go horizontally nil and vertically down, let's say, let's go about 7 centimeters, 7 or 8. It's up to you. It doesn't really matter as long as it's not less than about 2 or 3 centimeters. And then with this point, I'm simply going to place, so copy and paste a new one. I'm going to place one on the side seam at the very tip of the underarm. I can do exactly the same. I'm just going to copy and paste another one at the other tip of my armhole, and then paste in yet another one at the very far back, center back of my neckline. Okay, so we have our points. So I've measured this one roughly about 7 or 8 centimeters down, and I'm going to measure this one roughly about 3.5 centimeters down. Let's go 0 and then 3.5. Let's copy. Next, I'm going to simply grab my rotation tool. I'm going to click on that point and then rotate this point around that point here until we actually connect with that side seam. That way we know for a fact that that is 3.5 centimeters from point to point. Next, I'm going to do exactly the same on the opposite side. So I'm going to get my big selection tool. I'm going to click. I'm going to hit the Enter key and go 0, and then once again 3.5 and hit copy. Okay, once again, we've now moved this down 3.5 centimeters, and I'm going to rotate this, so click on my rotation tool, around that point until it lands on that side seam there. Okay, that way we know that this measurement is 3.5 centimeters. So essentially these two are going to match. Next, I'm going to get my center back, and I'm going to measure roughly, let's say about the same. Let's go 8 centimeters. So same as the front, I'm going to come down about 8 centimeters, I'm going to hit copy, and it's straight down. Look at that, perfect. So we now have our points, okay? And the reason why we've done this is because we want to separate. We don't want to use this entire block as a facing. We just want to use, let's say, a top edge, okay? Just this top half to cut down on material. So to do this, we're simply going to draw a line now, okay? We're going to create our facing block. So with the pen tool, just going to click and hold, go pen tool. I'm going to click on the center of that point, because this is how far our facing is going to come down. Next, I'm going to click on the side seam point, and then I'm going to deselect. Next, I'm going to go to my pen tool again, click, go to the center point, and then the center point once again. Now essentially, that's a facing. So if I was to remove everything of this block past this line, this would be a facing. This would be attached to the inside of your garment to give you that nice clean seam on the neckline and on the armhole. However, this is a little bit unattractive. So for example, if I were to then, let's say, place these blocks together, let's just rotate so they're together. If I was to place these blocks together, you'd see you'd have a point at the underarm, which is not particularly attractive or clean, or, I mean, it's up to you. It's your design feature. If you want to do that, you can. However, I would be more inclined to do something that's a bit more along the lines of something like that. You see how you've got this really beautiful, nice sloping curve underneath the armhole. So essentially what we're doing now is just refining this block, or refining this, this bottom shaping to your facing. So let's just go back to where we were, which is there. So we're going to start to create some really beautiful shaping to this line, okay? Because it's just not quite attractive enough. And we should take pride in the garment that we're producing, because people do look on the inside. So to do this, what I really need to do is square out from these lines, okay? So I'm going to create a square. Just click, square. I'm just going to draw a big rectangle. Click and drag to create a big rectangle. Okay, perfect. Although essentially that should have been done the opposite direction. A big rectangle, perfect. I'm then going to go to my rotation tool, and I'm going to click on this point, and I'm going to rotate it until it meets the side seam. Now the reason why we're doing this, if you remember in the last tutorial, where we were talking about necklines, curves always work better when they are squared off, let's say, a side seam or a center front. So for example, this is our side seam. To create a really beautiful curve that meets this one accurately and beautifully, we need to square out from this line here, okay? So now we have our squared out line. I'm going to click on our actual bottom of our facing. Actually, first of all, let's just make these the same color so we know what are guides and what aren't. So I'm going to click on this line. I'm going to go to my Convert Anchor Point tool. I'm then going to click and drag, and you see I can now use that line as a guide to create a really smooth, beautiful, let's say, curve to my my facing. And I know that when these two seams meet, we'll have a really perfect join here, and I'll show you a little bit later exactly how or why, because this might be a little bit confusing. We can do exactly the same with the center front, but we don't need to square out, because essentially we already have a horizontal, you see? We've already got it. So I'm just simply going to use my Convert Anchor Point tool, click on that point, click and drag, and try and drag it out in a horizontal line, okay, so we get that really beautiful shaping. However, it can be a little bit tricky to get that horizontal, so just hold down the Shift key and it will lock it to different angles, okay, and horizontal is one of them. So let's just create a really beautiful, nice sloping curve that will essentially mimic or follow the lines of your block, okay. So now we've created our back facing, well, almost. Let's just get rid of this square here, and let's go to our front. Okay, next we're going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to square out from this point, so go to your square tool, click and drag, and next I'm going to rotate, so click my rotation tool, click and then rotate. So we're now squaring once again out from this side seam, okay? And then once again, I'm going to click this line. I'm going to go to my Convert Anchor Point tool by clicking, holding, and then releasing on Convert Anchor Point tool. I'm just going to click and drag until we have a really lovely sloping line. Okay. Do exactly the same with the front because, let's just get rid of the fill, because once again, like the center back, we already have that vertical and we already had a horizontal. I can simply just drag that bezier out or drag that curve out until we get a really beautiful curve. And instead, if you hold down the Shift key, it'll lock it to your horizontal axis. Okay, so that's looking really nice. Okay, so that is essentially it. We've created our facing panels. Okay, so next, obviously we don't want the rest of this pattern because we've actually traced these blocks off. So first of all, let's just get rid. Okay, we only want this top part here, so let's just get rid of the bottom. So I'm just going to simply, with my small selection tool, I'm going to select this line or this outline of this block. I'm going to go to my cut tool, cut. I'm just going to cut at that point and cut at that point. And as you can see, the top is now completely separated from the bottom. So let's just go to our small selection tool. Let's select this bottom half and let's just hit delete about 3 or 4 times, okay, or backspace on your keyboard. Lovely. So that is our top facing panel for the back. I'm going to do exactly the same with the front. I'm just going to select my existing block. I'm going to go to my cut tool and I'm going to snip just here and here. And once again, I'm going to go to my small selection tool, click and drag, delete. Okay, we can actually even get rid of our bust point as well. So these are our 2 new facing panels. As you can see, we've left in the notches for the sleeve, which is perfect. We need to keep those. We can now actually get rid of these circular points because they're no longer needed. Okay, we've done our measuring. Let's just delete, 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 delete. Oops, not that one. Delete. Just hit delete a few times when it comes to deleting these points, so no stray elements are left. Wonderful. Okay, so this is our facing block, but at the moment this is completely separate to the rest of our block, so we want to join these together. And the way we do that is with the small selection tool, we click and drag, and then we join. We click and drag, and then we join. And then we, drag, or click and drag over these 2 points, right click, join. Once again here, right click, join. Okay, so these patterns are now one, and you can see that by if I simply click on those lines. Okay, perfect. So next, I'm going to clean these patterns up and name them, okay, because we've pretty much finished producing them. So first of all, we need a grain line because this basically explains what direction our fabric needs to go in. So instead of deleting this completely altogether and creating a new one, I'm just going to go to my small selection tool. I'm going to click and drag over these little endpoints here, and then just going to click and drag. Well, not click, but simply, yeah, click and just simply drag it around. Now obviously that's going to break our grain line. So once again, hold down the Shift key and it will expand and contract on the horizontal, on the vertical axis. Okay, so that's our new grain line, which doesn't go off our pattern. Same again, small selection tool, click and drag, and then simply click and drag until you get to the top. Now that's quite a small position for my grain line, so let's just move it, shall we? So small selection tool, let's select over all of it, and let's just move it to somewhere where it's got a bit more space. Once again, small selection tool, click and drag, and then hold down Shift to click and drag those out. Perfect. Let's move that up a bit. Lovely. You can even move these in a bit if you want. You can do that with your arrow keys. You're simply left and right with the arrow keys, or up and down. There we go. Make it a little bit more attractive so you've got a bit more space. Okay, fantastic. Next, I'm simply going to bring back my descriptions. So first of all, let's put this back on the front panel. Let's put the back one on the back panel, and make sure that it does say back panel and front panel, because when it comes to cutting this out, you don't want to get them confused. Let's also, big selection tool, select this item, and then go edit, copy, edit, paste, and then we can paste it on the back. Okay, essentially we've already got this information here, so we can just get rid of that if we want to. You can do that by going to your small selection tool, clicking and dragging. Oops, don't have that one. Clicking and dragging, then deleting. Okay, let's take the front, let's copy and paste, or Control-C, Control-V on your computer, and paste that in. Okay, but we want, this is no longer the front panel, it is the front-facing panel. So now we can add facing. It's always a very good idea to label your patterns, because if you basically can't find them, or you come back to them in a couple of years' time, you kind of want to know what these mean, or if somebody else picks up your pattern, it's a good idea to label them. So we've now created these facing panels, which is perfect. Next, I'm simply going to select with my big selection tool. I'm going to select over the entire area, and then just go Object, and then group them. Okay, so this is now one element which we can move around. Otherwise, we would have problems, you see? These are all separate elements. So let's just select everything, Object, and then Group. Perfect. Let's have a look. Yep, do these be grouped? Yes, at some stage. Okay. So next, what we're going to do is add a few notches. Okay, we've got notches for the armhole here, but essentially we need some for the neckline because it is quite a wide neckline, and we don't want our material to stretch or to pucker or to gather when we actually put these together. We want to make sure that this point here meets exactly the same point on the actual block itself. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to let's select these two pieces. Let's just drag them over. There we go. I'm just going to line them up, or at least line one of them up for now. So let's just take it off. I'm just going to, big selection tool, I'm going to click on that point and then drag it to where it should be. Okay, I'm a little bit off here, but that's alright. You can zoom in and you can nudge it with the arrow keys. Okay, you can nudge it around, or just getting closer, and that will give you a more accurate ability to position your pattern. Okay, so this is our facing panel. Okay, let's make it red just so we can actually see it. There we go, red. Let's also drag in our other facing panel, just like so. That's off a little bit. Let's zoom in, and there we go. Perfect. So they're now lying directly on top of their existing or relative patterns. So next we're going to add some notches. This is really very, very simple. Okay, it's just a case of drawing some lines. So first of all, I'm going to go to my pen tool, and let's give them a nice bright colour so we know that they're actual notches and nothing else. You can do that simply by double clicking on this little line item here, or this line palette, and then selecting whatever colour you want. Let's go for orange, it's quite nice. I'm then going to go to my line tool, and I'm going to click. I'm just going to click once, and this brings up the line segment tool options, which allows you to tell somebody what the length is of, actually, you know what, no, let's do it, let's use the existing notches that we've done in the past. Okay, let's keep it consistent. So to do that, I'm simply going to, with my small selection tool, I'm going to click. Let's really zoom in here because we want to get the fill, not the line, but we actually want to get the fill. Let's click on this notch and let's go Control-C to copy, or Edit Copy, and then Edit Paste, or Control-V to paste that in. Next, let's zoom out. Let's take that little point and let's place, let's say, 1 on the neckline. We probably shouldn't need more than 1. If you're really worried, you can always have 2 notches. So you're matching the facing with the block in these 2 locations. Okay, so you'd snip into your material, and this is where your 2 blocks would connect or line up with themselves. So we've got our notches, but essentially, if I was to select this one with my big selection tool, select this one, hold down Shift, select the other one to queue up that selection, and then obviously hold down Shift and queue up the selection of my facing, I could take it with me, but there'd be nothing left. So essentially at the moment we've only got 1 notch for 1 panel, or 2 notches just for 1 panel. So to get notches for both, really simple, I'm just going to select this item. So let's go to the big selection tool, hold down Shift, big selection tool, let's then just go copy and then paste. So we just pasted in 2 more, okay? And I'm just going to literally lay them directly on top of the existing ones, okay? And to make sure of that, let's just make absolutely sure they're on top of each other, because this is important. There we go, lovely. So essentially we now have 4 points, 2 on top of each other here and 2 on top of each other here. So next I'm simply going to big selection tool, click on this point, hold down the Shift key, click on the next notch, and then click on my facing. Okay, and that's now selected all of them. Next I'm going to go to Object and then Group. Now what this does is, this basically locks or links these notches, okay, to that facing panel. So let's just pull that over there. But as you can see, we still have those notches remaining, because we obviously copied in another 2 for the bodice block. So now I'm just going to select over that block these are actually locked. So let's go Object, Unlock All. So now we can actually edit these blocks. I'm now going to select over the entire block itself using the big selection tool. Just select over that entire area, and I'm going to go Object and then Group. So now this is one piece, and those notches are now locked to that pattern. Okay, let's do exactly the same with the front. Okay, so I'm going to simply paste in some notches because they're still on my clipboard. Let's have a look. If not, you can always just simply go back, select this item, copy and paste it. We only need one because, to be fair, this neckline is quite small. So I've just deleted that existing notch. Next, I'm going to click and drag until anywhere on this neckline, doesn't matter. Let's put it in the middle somewhere. It's quite nice. There we go. Perfect. And once again, I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste and then drop another one directly on top of it. Next, I'm going to click on one of those points or one of those notches. I'm then going to hold down the Shift key, click on my pattern, and I'm going to go Object and then Group. So I'm grouping that notch with that facing panel, and there you have it. Okay, so this is our notch, and obviously we're left with the remaining one. So let's just select over that whole block, and let's just go Object and then Group. Perfect. So now we have pretty much finished our facing panels, like so. Let's just remove some fill. So we've pretty much finished our facing panel, and we've created notches so that when we do actually come to put these together in the material, we'll know that that point meets exactly, or that notch meets exactly the other notch. Okay, and that works beautifully. You can always go back and place it to make sure they're in the right position. But that's a pretty much foolproof strategy. Lovely, so that's our facing panels. Okay, so next, if you want to then finish your pattern, I would obviously follow the next tutorials that we have, which is basically how to add seam allowance to your block and also your facing panels. Okay, you can do this by watching one of our tutorials. There are links at the very, very bottom of this page, so have a look for those. And then obviously you can download our PDF, multi-page PDF templates, which will allow you to, and watch the tutorial. That will allow you to place these blocks onto those templates and print them from your home printer, or share them with your friends, etc. Okay, so as I said, we've created facings for these, let's say, panels. However, this is just one neckline. What happens if you have a completely different array of necklines? So let's just copy this and let's go to a completely new document. Don't worry about this stage, this is fine. Let's make it 3000 by about, I don't know, 3000. Okay, so let's paste in our block. I'm going to change the necklines very quickly, just so you can see how to create a facing with different necklines. So let's say this is now our new neckline on the front, and this is now our new neckline on the back. Okay, let's get rid of those points, because they no longer exist. Let's also just get rid of this text, because it's in the way. Okay, so we have our new necklines. Now, once again, exactly the same process. Now, before, you remember that I measured from this point down to here. This is something you can do by eye. There's no real kind of science behind it. It's as long as you have more than about 2 centimeters, 2.5 centimeters from the edge when it comes to your facing, you should be okay. But there is one thing that's very important that I want to show you, which is basically when it comes to let's say these darts. Okay, so let's say you wanted to have a facing which was so let's say about 5 centimeters roughly down from here, and you want it to be about roughly 3.5 on the opposite side. Now you see how this it causes problems, it interacts with this dart. So if you were to then sew this dart together on your facing, you would have an additional 0.5 centimeters on the inside of your garment. Okay, if you just simply cut this panel piece off. So the way around that is to simply continue that dart into this facing, okay, but then you'd have to sew up this tiny little bit of material. So the way around it is to simply adjust the line on your bodice block, or on your facing, sorry, to adjust the distance or the depth, and then using curves, then move around it. So, for example, we could either move this a little bit higher up, but obviously that's too short. So we have to use some other techniques. Let's move it back down to where it was. We can always add a point literally where that dart is, and then we can just simply, with our small selection tool, find that point and move it up. Okay, you see that? And we can literally have it touching that point. As long as it doesn't interact with that dart, we're fine. And we can now create our, what do you call it? Our facing panel using this top half without interfering with the dart whatsoever. Otherwise, let's say it was down here, this is your facing panel, if that was your decision. Once again, your facing panel would look something like this, which is just a bit of a pain, to be fair, because you've got to sew that up. So always bear that in mind when you're drawing, let's say you're facing or creating the line for your facing. Okay, you can always play with it, you can move it around, you can always do it on your back or front block first of all, and then change the shape of it. Okay, the one thing that you have to remember is that you should always square out from this side seam. Okay, always. So when you're creating your bezier, always use that squaring out, okay? Or square out from the side seam. And then when you have created, let's say your back facing or your front facing, just make sure you take the measurement from this point to this point, because you'll need to do the same measurement on the opposite side. Otherwise, when the facings go together, there might be a step in your block, okay? And the way to do this is simply go to your measuring tool, just click and drag, and you can see that's 1.44.8, sorry, 114, this is in pixels. Let me change this to rulers to centimeters. Centimeters, there we go. Let's delete that. So it would be 5.11 centimeters, which is fine. So to then translate that to the side seam, I would then create another point. So go to my ellipse tool. Let's just create that point. And then let's go 0 horizontally, and vertically down we're going to go 5 point, I think it was 11, I'm not quite sure. Let's just go copy. Okay, then let's go to our rotation tool, click, and then rotate. And that is the point at which your block will meet, or your facing panel will meet. And just to show you that that is correct, let's just grab this block and move it into position. Rotate it around that point, and there you have it. I mean, if you want to, you can always place these blocks together and draw your line all in one go. There's no reason why not. But once again, always remember that you need to square out from this side seam. So draw a box, rotate around the point, and then square out. Let's then mark our point. Let's mark a point anywhere on the centre back, or centre front, sorry, it's not a big deal. It's up to you. It depends how much material you want to use. Then let's go to our Convert Anchor Point tool. Let's click and then drag to create a nice smooth line, using that as our square out line. And the centre front, let's just do the same. Now you see, because we place these two blocks together, I no longer have my horizontal. Okay, so we would have to do the same thing when it came to squaring out, which is probably a good point to make. So let's just square out. Rotate around till we have that square out position, click on that line, and then change our beziers. Okay, perfect. So that is how we would, let's say, create a facing for this block. But however, you could bring it up here, it's not a problem. It's completely up to you what you do, just as long as you do not get in the way of your darts. Okay? Great, well I hope that was helpful, and I hope that gave you a little bit of insight when it came to creating different necklines and different facings. As you can see, it's so much more fun with Adobe Illustrator because you have so much more control. It's just effortless, really. But yeah, if you have any questions or queries, or if you want me to elaborate on any more parts, just please let me know. Thank you very much.